But now to Wisconsin, Governor Scott Walker, one of the Republicans exploring a run in 2016. He's in Iowa this morning. Governor, welcome. Well, you just heard Secretary Gates, not exactly complimentary to the Republican field thus far, but does he have a point?
Well, I think foreign policy is going to be an important part, along with talking about growth, helping grow the economy, and helping reform the federal government by taking power from Washington and sending it back to the states. But I talk to people all the time. Was just in La Crosse, Wisconsin yesterday at my state party convention, last night at the Iowa Republican Party event. And I got to tell you, one of the areas where people talk the most to me about is the safety and security of this country and our allies around the world. So I do think it's going to be an important issue. If I choose to get into this race, it's something I'm going to lay out a very clear plan for what we should do going forward and how we should address the issues we face here in America and the issues we face around the world. So I think there's a wide open door to lay out a very clear doctrine. And I do think that if foreign policy plays an important role, the contrast will be clear, because everywhere, just about everywhere that Hillary Clinton has played a role with this president under President Obama, that part of the world is largely a failure, a mess, because of the policies that we've seen from Obama and Clinton.
Well, you've just come back from Israel, but let me just ask you, what would you list as your foreign policy credentials?
Well, I think as a governor, it's really ultimately about leadership. To me, in my lifetime, one of the best presidents when it comes to foreign policy was a governor from California. In my lifetime, one of the worst presidents when it comes to foreign policy was a freshman senator from Illinois. So I think it's not just about past experiences, it's about leadership. As a governor, you have to put a cabinet in place, and hopefully you pick people as smarter than you on any given topic. I think that's something that's required of a successful president, is putting people in place, be it Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, Secretary of State, and others, and then having the good sense to listen to them and to others, and the chain of command in the military, consulting with the Congress. All those sorts of things I think are important of a president, and I think successful governors in either party have to do that every single day, consult with people in their cabinet and act. The most beyond that is, as a governor, I've been to just recently in Germany, in Spain, and France. Earlier in the year was the United Kingdom on trade-related missions, a few years back in China and Japan. So that's probably the most that any governor of either party has, is that experience in terms of trade relations, and something I think is very important, not just to our states, it's important to our country.
Well, you know, Jeb Bush, and you just heard what Secretary Gates said. He was a governor, but he had kind of a hard time, it seems to me, answering that question of would he have gone into Iraq had he known what we all now know. And he gave about 4 different answers by the end of the week. He said, well, no, he wouldn't have. What do you have to say about that? Did that surprise you?
I tend to agree with what I tend to agree with Secretary Gates. We should really be talking about the challenges we face going forward. But I did stand up and defend the president, President Bush, that is, saying I think any president, regardless of party, probably would have made a similar decision to what President Bush did at the time with the information he had available. Remember, even Secretary of State, then Senator Clinton, voted for measures supporting the Iraq war. I think it was a failure in many cases in the intelligence that was given to the president, to the Congress at the time. Knowing what we know now, I think it's safe for many of us, myself included, to say we probably wouldn't have taken that tack. But I give credit to the president for recognizing the challenges, for being responsible for the surge, listening to those in Congress who were pushing for that. That was highly successful. And I also think it's important to learn from the fact that this president and the advisors he had, like Secretary Clinton, I think made a mistake by urging the country to pull back from our stand in Iraq, and we have a place that's largely destabilized now because of their quick move in the last few years to get out of Iraq. That's something we need to learn from going forward. We have a very destabilized region, and we need to have a strong presence there.
Let me ask you about something that you said previously. You told a gathering that the most significant foreign policy decision of your lifetime was Ronald Reagan's ending of the 1981 air traffic controller strike. You said it sent a message not only across America, it sent a message around the world. Don't you think there may have been a few things, while I agree that that was a significant development, a few things maybe a little more important, like the Nixon's opening to China, for example, the decision to go after Osama bin Laden? Do you really think that was the most significant foreign policy statement of your lifetime?
Well, I think those were all important things, don't get me wrong in that regard, but this is not something I hold alone. Former Secretary of State George Shultz said that that was the most significant action during the Reagan administration. I came of age during the Reagan administration. I believe, just turned 13 2 days before his election in 1980. And for me, looking at that kind of leadership, he set the tone, not just domestically with that action. He sent the message around the world, as you just read off, I think not only to our allies, that this was someone who was serious, that could be trusted, but in combination with our adversaries, they sent a clear message not to mess with him. You combine that clear leadership position he took early in his administration with the buildup in the military, much like we need today to get back to a minimum of at least a Gates level budget for the Department of Defense. You combine that and what he did in the 80s with the leadership he showed early on in his term, and that's why I believe in many regards we had one of the lowest levels of military engagement, not because President Reagan was afraid to engage, but because our adversaries knew he would if needed, and I think that made for a safer world. That was peace through strength personified.
Let me ask you quickly about the Iran negotiations. You're ready to stop the negotiations, as I understand it. What do you see as the alternative?
Well, I think if we're going to have negotiations, we should have them on our terms, not on theirs. To me, we need to dismantle the illicit nuclear infrastructure they have. That has to be clear. It's a real threat not just to Israel. I've talked to leaders from the Persian Gulf states, the Sunni states, who have very real concerns in that regard. Secondly, they need to provide full disclosure, transparency, and immediate ability to inspect, which I don't think we fully have right now under at least the parameters of the supposed deal. And third, we need to make sure that they deal with others in the region. That Iran, in many ways, is not much different than the country. I remember as a kid when I tied yellow ribbons around the tree in front of our house when Americans were held hostage. People like my friend Kevin Hermaning from Wausau, Wisconsin, who was the youngest Marine held there. I don't see a lot changing. They need to learn to deal with others in the region. I think you've seen their influence in terms of Shiite militias, not only in Iraq, but obviously their involvement in Syria, now with the Houthis in Yemen. Those are the sorts of things we need to crack down on.
All right. And one final question. When are you going to make the decision on whether or not to run?
My state budget will be completed by the end of June. It's something I'm focused on every day, completing another budget with a 5th and 6th year of property tax relief on. Once that's completed at the end of June, we'll announce our intentions to our state, to our country, and the world, and we'll keep you posted.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Governor. Nice to talk to you.
Great to be with you, too.